Good afternoon. I'm Jordan Roth, and this is the DALLÄSTHETIC podcast, episode number 11. I'm here with Kate Aoki of the Dallas Architecture Forum's Design Society. And so Kate was a graduate of RISD with a degree in design, textile design, and then moved forward with a master's in architecture from UTA, where you're currently teaching, and live here in the area as well. Well, I'm excited to have you here. There are a lot of questions about design that I think I know the answers to, but maybe don't, and it'll be fun to kind of unpack that, that subject for us. So tell me, I guess first of all, what is the Design Society?
Well, thanks for having me. I should also add that I'm an architect at DSG and Associates. My boss would love the plug. So.
Oh, good, good. I should have
So
mentioned that
there
myself.
too. No, that's okay. The Design Society is an affiliate of the Dallas Architecture Forum, and the Dallas Architecture Forum is a nonprofit architectural entity. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary last year. We bring prominent lecturers and panels to Dallas to discuss the state of architecture, the built environment. We have a great operation. I'm on the board of a member of the board of directors, where I've been for a couple of years. And I noticed that we have excellent membership. We get a lot of interest from the community outside of architecture. You know, of course, we have a lot of architects, but we also have members who come to hear the lectures who know nothing about architecture. And we have younger members who come to the lectures as well, but a lot of times it's just because of the lecturer itself. And what I thought was going to be important for the future of the Architecture Forum was to start to engage these younger members on more of a constant, casual level outside of the lectures and panels, and then also to engage a wider design and arts community, because architecture is a discipline that I think is informed by all level of design and art. And so it was important to me and to the forum to start to engage all members of those communities. So the Design Society was founded with the mission to begin to access all of those people in one place through various events, casual events, fun events, things like that.
And how many years has the Design Society been a thing?
Not long, like a year, a little over a year. So we've done a couple of events. We have done a pavilion picnic where we go to local park pavilions around the city. Of course, the city had a big effort a number of years ago to redesign the park pavilions that were starting to become decrepit and old and outdated, and hire local prominent architects as well as architects from across the country to submit designs for them.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really fun. So we meet there. We have one coming up on this coming Saturday, the 29th, from 11 to 1 at the Webb Chapel Park Pavilion. We just get together and talk about it, eat some tacos, and hang out. We also hosted the Pecha Kucha that you were a part of earlier this year, which was a big success. We got a lot of good feedback from that. So, you know, we're sort of starting to really take a deep dive now into programming and planning more events, getting our name out there more, so that we can really start to grow more enthusiasm for the endeavor.
It's interesting. I had thought about it earlier today about architecture and design, and wondering kind of, is architecture a subset of design? And it felt like it was, because you're designing structures that people will engage with, whereas in other types of design, you're designing objects or places or any number of things that people engage with, and architecture, we feel like we know what that is, and some people are aficionados of architecture and have their favorite periods and architects, and can kind of have a starting point in a conversation based on what they know, and I almost see kind of a similar it's similar to somebody that's into cars, or like if they're not
Fashion.
or fashion, yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course with other parts of design, for me it's a little nebulous because I think of so many different things that are design. There's like industrial design and product design and all of those things, which almost relate a lot to architecture, and relate a little bit to art and packaging design and things like that. And so it's interesting that it's a very wide-ranging field, almost really probably as wide a range of field as what we consider art.
Yes.
Just maybe more technical, or more, what would you say a key difference would be?
I was thinking about that. It's sort of, it's a philosophical question. I can answer it for myself. I'm sure that there are many people who have their own answers, like anything else on earth that you could talk about. But I would consider design an applied creative process that's meant to make a thing appropriate for the use. So that's kind of in essence, I think, what it boils down to, where the end goal is for that thing to be used, whether it's a car, a dress, a ladder, it doesn't matter. Somebody will probably be engaging with this in a hands-on kind of way, a building. Whereas art is also a creative process, but it's more of an emotional expression that's meant to engage the user in a totally different way. Oftentimes we don't touch it. We interpret it the way we feel like we should. Whereas, like, again, a microphone, it sort of tells you what it wants you to do, and you're meant to touch it, engage with it, speak into it. And architecture is, I would argue, not so different from that. It gets to a little bit of a tricky territory when you start talking about a lot of the architects. Of course, so many people know Frank Gehry or Zaha Hadid, somebody like that really takes the idea of a functional built use and turns it into an object.
Yeah.
So you're trying to expand the idea of a box and turn it into something that could be much more sculptural. So the lines get blurred occasionally, and I'm sure there are some things that are designed that are meant to be totally useless. Maybe not. Maybe their designers didn't think that, but
right.
It's hard to look around in our environment wherever we are, unless we're just out in the woods, and not see something that's not designed. Our lives are constructed, and so a designer had to do that at some point. And so many of them come from artistic backgrounds, because you want to design it in a beautiful way and you want to design it in a useful way. So I try to take my art background into consideration anytime I'm designing, which makes it fun,
Yeah. So the Rhode Island School of Design is as known for its fine art department as anything else too. Was there a lot of interaction between design and art there?
There was, once you started getting into it, there's a lot of work at RISD as a student. So, once you're engaged in the studio and you're there all night, it's sometimes hard to break out. But just by way of making friends and people in other departments, there's also a great winter session program where in between semesters you take a brief, I can't remember how long it is, 4 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, of anything you want to study. So if you're a printmaker, you could go take photography. If you're a textile designer, you could go take industrial design for a week, that kind of thing. So they really promote the idea of cross collaboration. And we live in a very siloed kind of world with a lot of siloed kind of thinking. And I think that it's important that we realize that so much of what we do can be influenced by art, and so it's good to remember that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. There's always like kind of a back and forth between, certain dealing with certain materials, between art and craft, and
right.
A lot of times you'll hear that craft is functional, and art is high art, or it's not functional, and I see a similar dialogue between design and art. And does an art object ever become a design object?
Sure. I'm trying to think of an example. Of course, it's,
That's probably a tough one.
it's
That's
a tough one.
riddle.
Well, it's, if you hadn't asked me, then I could probably think of a million just
Yeah.
offhand. But, if you go, well, in a technical sense, yes, there are, I think, many objects that have been designed as art objects that then evolve into being useful.
Yeah.
Useful.
Yeah. I'm kind of.
Yeah, but.
We'll have to think on that one, maybe.
Well, I know. I'm trying to. Well, like the MoMA store, a lot of jewelry, I would say,
Yeah.
wearable art, oftentimes is something that blurs the lines between the two. Some art installations themselves become interactive and start to blur the lines a little bit. Once you apply a human intervention and a human engagement with that thing, then it starts to get into more of a sort of design type of territory. But again, it's a tricky one to sort of parse out.
I think it's obvious that a lot of design objects have kind of become art objects.
And vice versa. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you see that in museums often. Does software design and computer design, does that interact, or is that within the realm, or is kind of out there?
I am the worst at computers and software and things like that, and I have such an appreciation for everything technological, and it's just like this amazing feat that humans have come up with, that we've evolved this technology. But certainly if you think about like a really well-designed website, know as soon as you land on it that it's been really well thought about. Somebody really took the time to think about how you navigate through the existence that is that web page. Building architects often talk about the how digital designers have taken on, software engineers have taken on the name architect, the title architect, to describe what they do.
Yeah.
If you do, I have not done this recently, but if you do a job search for architect, half of what you pull up in terms of related jobs are for technological architects. So
Well, everyone's a curator too now. So
everyone is definitely, with Instagram and anything else, it's just one of the things that people can do.
But that's interesting, and of course there's like computer-aided design, where people are making sculptures and
Sure.
and like their medical uses, body parts and bones and things.
It's crazy.
Made
Like
from
3D printing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Guns. I mean, you can make just about anything with a 3D printer. It's
crazy.
Wild.
Yeah, it's really wild. So I'm somebody that I'm very involved in the visual arts and fine art, and I go to museums and I spend a lot of time at our gallery, and I go to my friends' galleries and whatnot, and I read about art and all of that, and I feel like I'm just totally kind of agnostic to design. Like, I know it's there, I know it's great, I just don't know much about it. And what's a good entry point for someone like me? I know I'm not the only one.
I actually think the bridge between design, and I'm thinking specifically about architecture, I think the furniture design can be a good bridge, because you're taking something that is designed in every sense of the word. And again, there's good furniture design, there's bad furniture design, but if you look at the work of somebody like Charles and Ray Eames, where they boiled down architecture into its essence and turned it into livable, movable pieces of furniture, but they also really thought about things like color. They thought about things like form and composition. They thought about all of the same things that you might think about as you're looking at artwork. Some furniture is very orderly and very structural, which might be, I don't know, like a Diebenkorn or a Mondrian or something like that, and then you have the more flowy, artistic, expressive pieces, big, fluffy, cushy things that don't have much form, and that could relate more to whoever you want to think of, Matisse or somebody like that, you know, you can start to draw parallels between things that are designed and things that are painted or sculpted. What's your sort of sticking point? What's the sort of thing that turns you away from it?
What turns me away, I guess, and it's not like a real aversion, it's more of a thing where I feel like it's a whole world that I don't know much about, and that where do I jump in? Is it going to overwhelm me? Yeah.
Well, and I would also say, I mean, think of the things in your life that you're particularly interested in. You said cars, so that makes me think maybe you're interested in cars. There's a whole world of car design that's just beautiful and fascinating, and the way that they apply that process to an automobile is, I would think, a really interesting starting point. You know, a lot of times they sculpt and craft the models of the cars in order to really design them, and that's not at all dissimilar from the way artists work. So I would say that anybody who is not sure where to jump in, think about what you like and start just Googling it. You know, Google who designed the Tesla. Everybody knows who designed Tesla, but you know, as an example. I would also, you know, again, as a plug for the Design Society and the Dallas Architecture Forums, just start going to lectures. You know, they're not expensive. People are very friendly. There's usually free booze there. You know, there's all sorts of reasons to go and just sort of show up and see what you learn. And again, you'd probably be shocked by the similarities between art and design and how compatible the processes and the ways of thinking are when it comes to creativity and making things in the world that people appreciate as beautiful objects.
Is the Architecture Forum now at Republic Tower, or is that something else?
No, that's the AIA and the Dallas Center for Architecture have now moved to Republic Tower and have rebranded themselves as ADEX.
Okay.
Art and Design Exchange, I think it's called.
And then you guys, do you interface with them at all?
Sometimes we have collaborated in the past, and we collaborate when we can. I think it's a good thing to do with them because they're the professional arm of architecture. The AIA is.
Oh, gotcha.
And then the Dallas Center for Architecture, or ADEX, is sort of the again, the sort of entry point for people in the city to go learn about architecture at sort of a street level. You know, they do walking tours and things like that. Whereas the forum is a nonprofit, lecture-based entity of its own. So a lot of people do get us confused with the architecture, the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, and we're two separate entities.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then do you have a facility, or do you use the museums and whatnot?
We do. Well, and our lectures are held. You'd have to go to our webpage to see where they are. This year, we're just starting to have some lectures at the Angelica.
Oh, cool.
We were at the Magnolia, but the Angelica I'm excited about because it's right off the Dart line. You can just take the Dart there, jump out. We actually have a lecture tonight at the DMA because we're collaborating with the DMA on their exhibition that I think has just opened about machinery and
that precision, something about precision.
Right, I know, and I should have the name of that.
Yeah.
So I apologize. But that's another good way to start to think about design also, or paintings about design.
Yeah, for sure.
Things.
For sure.
So Carol Willis is speaking tonight about the rise of the American skyscraper, which should be really a great lecture. And so it's always fun when we can collaborate with other local institutions to get people in the door and to see what we're all about.
What are the dues for, say, the Design Society? Is there a fee-based system or anything?
The Design Society is actually free right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, you know, some of our events, like for the Pechacucha, we asked for donations at the door, but for the pavilion picnics, it's free. The Architecture Forum lectures you have to pay for, and there are varying levels of depending on who you are or what level you want to become a member. But right now, as of now, the Design Society events are free. So there's no reason not to go.
So it's all about getting people engaged.
Yes, yes.
And right now, I think with topics such as urban planning and neighborhoods just changing overnight, and transportation, and how do we get people from one place to another, all these things are like topics that we talk about really
Right.
frequently. And then, our institutions are changing. And I know that last year I believe there was a forum on the museums of the future, something along those lines.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are things that are really interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we try to take all those things into consideration. And again, architecture is at its best when it's got some outside perspectives involved. And,
Yeah.
people walk around their cities and their neighborhoods oftentimes just knowing that there is a built environment around them, but not really thinking about it. They
Yeah.
just know that something feels good or it doesn't feel good. And so once you can start to really think critically about those things and think to yourself, wow, this would be so much better if the sidewalk was pulled back from the street by 10 feet and there was a
Totally,
tree,
yeah.
like that is urban planning and architecture and design. And so it's good that people learn about those things.
And what would you say, other than our Starchitect designed buildings in Dallas, what stands out as really unique for Dallas that we have?
That's funny that you asked that because I'm on a committee at the AIA, the Communities by Design Committee, and we had this exercise going for a few years talking about what makes Dallas Dallas. And a lot of people came up with, it's always easier to be a critic,
Yeah.
And so it was easy to sort of think about the negative aspects of our city, but in terms of what makes it unique, it's sort of it's kind of this ambiguous feeling that we were really trying to nail down with hard examples.
Mm-hmm.
The Starchitect buildings are great. They really sort of put us on the map and world class and all that stuff. But I would argue that the local architects and the local architectural community has been vibrant in Dallas for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And we have great regional examples of Texas vernacular, Texas style of architecture that responds really well to the environment. We have great little neighborhoods that are very unique. Oak Cliff, East Dallas, both of those are shining examples of Dallas architecture at its finest. And I'm lucky to work for a firm that really espouses local, hyper-local, regional architecture where we try to engage the community. We try to design buildings that work not just for the city, but work for their immediate environments as well. And that's one of the things that I think that Dallas a lot of times does really well when it's thought about really sincerely. The thing that worries me is that we're also a city that tears down really quickly. And we're working on how to educate Dallasites to preserve that sense. Because if you just keep tearing down and rebuilding, you never have a true identity. You just have new buildings that may or may not be all that interesting. And it's important that we preserve some of that. So
we see a lot of that in Highland Park and University Park, beautiful houses.
Old,
important houses.
Old, important houses, I know.
And then parts of Oak Cliff in their entirety are coming down.
Yep. And that's not to say that we can't add to what's already there.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't think that anybody's so naive as to think that we could just be a sea of 2- and 4-story buildings and just be done with it. But there is also something to be said. I loved the Elbow Room, down
Gaston.
by Fair Park.
Yeah.
And that was just a great example of a little neighborhood eatery shop that had been there for ages. And it added something to that direct community. It added something to that neighborhood that made it special, and it got torn down. And again, that's not to say that the School of Dentistry is not a necessary thing, but just trying to figure out ways to work with each other.
Yeah, like what makes a place special? The Loon, for instance.
Yeah.
Definitely not an architectural wonder.
Right, exactly.
But, it's now part of a CVS parking lot.
Yes, exactly.
And there was design involved. I mean, there was keeping out the light during the day, and, there were several things that they did to make that place a certain thing.
Exactly.
And I'd never even thought about just that element of design that maybe just happens over time too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these buildings develop a pastiche, and the Loon is actually a really good example because it was a pretty simple little brick strip mall kind of building, but it had a really rich history. It had been there for a long time. There were, interventions by the owners that through the years they had made modifications to the building. It had a really specific feel, and in our discussion in our committee about what makes Dallas Dallas, that's ultimately what we sort of landed on, was that it's the feel of a lot of these things. It's the character of these buildings that, while they may not be gorgeous buildings, they lend an overall feel to what our city is, and that's what makes Dallas Dallas.
That's nice. I like that.
Yeah.
And it's eclectic, you know?
Right,
I think it really is, and I think that really adds to it. There's not, we don't have an overreaching city code that says everything has to be stucco or,
Right,
something like that.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
thank
You
God.
need like 3 feet of brick or whatever.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's I'm glad to hear that. I was wondering if you'd say, City Hall or this or that, but it's nice to highlight the whole city and that eclectic sense. So tonight you've got the event at the Dallas Museum of Art.
Right.
How would people get tickets to that?
I believe you can buy tickets online. We might be getting a little bit late in the day for that, but you can buy tickets at the door.
Okay. Generally up until a few minutes before.
Yeah, and assuming that there's still room.
Yeah.
But you can also buy a ticket to see the exhibition tonight if you wanted to do that in tandem with seeing the lecture. So
Great idea.
it could be a cool thing to do. Just go before the lecture starts at 7.
Okay.
So it would be a great thing to do. Go support the DMA.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly interested in everything that you're doing, and I hope to engage more often as you grow. And I appreciate the time that you took with us today. And is there anything else that you'd like to kind of part with?
I don't think so. I appreciate you opening up the discussion between art and design. I think it's an essential thing that we should keep in the conversation, because art and design can learn a lot from each other, and I'm glad that you're interested, and I'm certainly interested in what you do, so we'd love to have you continue to talk to us.
Sure, you bet. Well, thank you for watching. This has been episode 11 of DALLÄSTHETIC, and Kate, thanks again for joining us. We will see you again next week, Tuesday at 2.